right, of and the industry of HR, just really, from our standpoint at the HR Disruptor Summit, it's all about reimagine work, right?
Yes.
And it just really needs to be reinvented. And
Yeah,
I
the
love
hiring
the
system's
fact that you
awful.
support entrepreneurs, right? And those startup businesses,
Yeah.
that's the backbone of our country, right?
Yes.
And so when we think of, especially now, I mean, the gig economy back in 2008 just busted open a new kind of entrepreneur and
Mhm.
lots of people becoming their own bosses.
Yeah.
And that, when you shared about how entrepreneurs can realize their visions without breaking the bank, I would love for you to share more about that.
Sure, sure. So one thing, I do some consulting that's outside of recruiting, obviously. And so because I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and helped them build their businesses, and I myself am an entrepreneur, so I know I've been around the block quite a few times. So just a few tips for entrepreneurs in general is, first of all, decide what you actually need versus what you just want. For instance, you don't need that big downtown office space. No, that is
Oh,
such
no.
a deal breaker. And let me tell you why that's a bad decision for most startup companies. Because even if you've got the capital, it's going to be wasted that way. And then later on down the road, when something happens like COVID, you could have had all that money just sitting in the bank. And it just doesn't make sense. You can be all remote, you can do shared space, you can do a less expensive office, that kind of thing. Green practices are huge. Stop putting everything on paper. I know people that still print resumes, that still print every single email that they get. Don't do that. All that printer ink, that paper, all of that, it doesn't make sense. When it comes to your advertising, get savvy. Make sure you're getting from the right audience before you pay anything. I see companies all the time that advertise the wrong ways. For instance, they're a B2B product, but they're advertising in a consumer magazine. So just going to people's houses. That doesn't make any sense. Don't
Yeah.
do that. So just be more savvy. And then when it comes to hiring, you really have to make sure that you get the right people, because a startup is not the same thing as a corporation, and having that autonomy of all of that support that you have from all the different departments and processes and procedures in place. You're building everything from scratch. So when you're hiring very specifically, make sure that you're getting the proper resources, and the number one thing that you should be looking for is creativity.
Is that not true?
Yeah.
Creative and entrepreneurial skill sets. Is
Yes.
that, I mean, people come, and it's interesting. And I'm
Hmm.
glad that you brought that up, Katherine, because I know, especially at COVID, I had clients that were in transition and they were a high match to creative and entrepreneurial. And I
Hmm.
said, those are the selling points you need to lead with. And they're like, well, what do you
Yes.
mean? Because right now, when companies are needing to reinvent themselves and think outside the box, it is your creative and entrepreneurial people who have that skill set and the
Yep.
mindset to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yep.
Reinvent your differentiator. And
Yep.
really a lot of companies, they don't know how to, they really don't know how to measure that. They don't know
It's
how
true.
to interpret it, because if you're not creative or entrepreneurial, you're not going to recognize those people. True?
Right. I think a lot of times it's really true. It is. Or they see it, but they don't see it the same way that another entrepreneurial person would look at it. For instance, when you're interviewing someone and they change jobs every year, let's say like right around the year mark, they're always changing jobs. But you notice that at every job, they have additional responsibilities given to them. They take on huge projects. They launch a product all by themselves that they've never had anything to do with before. When you see those kinds of people's entrepreneurs, that's who you should be going for. That's who you want,
Exactly.
because that's the kind of person that will grab hold of something and run. That's
You know, it's,
100% what you need.
it's interesting because those people that are in traditional HR roles or management roles, when they see that, they think that person's going to be rogue, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that they're out of control, right? And that's kind of like their mindset. Well, first of all, that's when you know that there's a resistance gap there, and you're probably not the best person to view, there needs to be
Yeah.
other people in your team to interview them, because obviously
Yes.
you're not seeing what their strengths are.
Right.
It's just not resonating with you, right? But
Right.
you're
And
absolutely correct. Creative and entrepreneurial people, you have got to have on your team. That's a must.
yes. Yes. And the people that are best for startups are people who, even if they don't change jobs, change projects frequently. They're constantly looking for something new to take on. Why is that important? Because in a startup, everybody has to do everything. There is no sticking to your lane. That's not reality. I've even had entrepreneurs come to me and go, "Oh no, I only need this person to do this." Yeah, okay. And then 3 months in, they've got them doing 5 different jobs every single time
And then they
without fail.
blame them, right? And then they get mad. They say, well, they're not good at such and such. Well, you didn't say that.
You didn't hire them for that.
Right. I mean, it's interesting when you and I've spoken about this. There are 10 stages of business growth, right? It doesn't matter how long the company's been in business, how many employees, that has nothing to do with it. It's what
Right.
stage of growth are you in? Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, those entrepreneurs that say, oh, well, I just need them to do A, B, and C. But once they get in the job and then they start to see, oh, well, you can do this and I'll have you do this.
Mhm.
They're saying just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Doesn't mean you should. And also pay those people appropriately. If you give them additional responsibilities, give them a bump in pay. Don't be a jerk. Come on. That's just common sense. If you give somebody additional responsibilities, they should be compensated accordingly. Now it's different if you take something away and then add something. That can kind of balance out. But if you're just giving, then you also need to make sure that they are getting. Those two things go hand in hand.
You
And
got
then the remote aspect, why this always cracks me up. People, all of my entrepreneurs and I have to have this conversation at some point of letting go. You don't need to control everything. Trust me, I am a control freak. I understand how that feels personally. As an entrepreneur, I have lived it, but you have to let go. And saying that you don't want a remote team 95% of the time is because you're being controlling. Even if you don't realize that, that's what it is. That's what's in your head is I must see, I have to be part of it. They have to be here. No, no, they don't. And my team has been remote since way before COVID. But if COVID has taught us anything, is that 100% is not true. Now, there are certain projects for which you might need to be on site together. There are certain types of positions like nursing. Obviously, you have to be on site, duh, things like that. But, or if compliance, so for some reasons, in some cases for compliance, you have to be in a certain location, that's okay. But for any other type of job, let it go, folks. And that also saves your business a lot of money. And it's a great perk. It's something that will help your employees to stay with you when they have that kind of flexibility.
Well, isn't it? It just comes back to nature, right? When you are like when vines grow around a tree, right, or another flower, it chokes it.
Mhm.
That's really what essentially what you're doing when you're hovering over your employees, right? Or
Yeah.
where you feel the need to constantly be attached to everything that's going on. We get it. Okay.
Yeah.
But when it comes to growing your business, you really, when you think about startups,
Mhm.
one of the biggest failures is that they were too controlling and didn't allow
Yeah.
their people to grow and to grow with their company, right? To be able
Or
to
they
release. You
get
got to let
something.
go.
Yeah. Or it's either that or they get some funny idea in their head and they let somebody get in their head that has no business being there. And so it's those two things. But yeah, don't control your people. That's how you lose good people and how the wrong people get into place and tank your company. I've seen
Real
it
quick, real
time and again.
quick. It happens real quick before you know it,
Mhm.
right?
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
that talks about when we talk about revolutionizing the hiring process, right? You and I are big proponents of objective hiring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this two-step process of a resume and an interview. I mean, can you just poke my eye out with a stick? I mean,
Yeah. It's
like,
awful. And
you
and
know,
people
uh,
don't. I understand why we are where we are, right? I mean, and I've studied the history of it. I've been around the history of it because, as you know, I grew up in a recruiting household. So I understand how we got here, but we need to do better. And it's time. And now we have the technology and we have the research and we have the communication capabilities to be able to do so much better. And it is proven that over 90%, and you can look up multiple studies for this, over 90% of people do not know how to make a resume. Think about that. Over 90%. And that's the one thing that's supposed to get you an interview or get you hired. Or mostly the interview part. That's ridiculous. If over 90% of people can't make them in a way that's viewed as effective by HR/recruiting, we need to not be using resumes anymore. It does not make any sense. And
We're
they
missing
create
a lot of
bias.
people, right? We're losing out on a lot of great people.
A lot of people and I'll say this too, a lot in my own estimation, and this is just years of dealing with it and talking to other recruiters and all that. I one day put pen to paper, and by my estimation, 68% of people who are involved in the hiring process do not know how to properly look at a resume anyway. So between over 90% not knowing how to make them, and then 68% not knowing how to interpret them, they don't make any sense. They don't make any sense. And you cannot possibly fit everything you know how to do onto a few pieces of paper. I tried to make a resume once that showed everything. I stopped at 19 pages because I got irritated.
19 pages?
And I was not even done. I was not even done with everything I can do. And so, or everything I have done, just all the projects, all my skills, everything. It's ridiculous. So we need a better way. And interviewing, a lot of people don't realize how to interview. They haven't been properly trained. They don't have the right personality to be effective at interviewing. Not every personality type is an effective interviewer. You know that. We've talked about it. Just not everybody is going to be great at this.
Well, especially, what the one that we specifically, the conversation I recall is when I had a client that was interviewing, right? They VP of economic development and the VP of HR. And so one had a candidate that they thought was better than the other. Well, the economic development director, it was similar to a sales position, and they had found somebody that they wanted to get interviewed. Well, they had one entry level HR person that was doing the scoring, interviewing, scoring, what the percentage survey or whatever, as far as the first level of conversation. Right. So it ends up that the person that wasn't really the best match for the job got a higher score from that HR rep than the other one, because that other person was not sales oriented. They were a 2 on sociability, a 2 on assertiveness. So those are definitely not top sales traits, right? I mean, you got to have high in sociability, or more than 2, and assertiveness in sales. So they wouldn't be able to recognize that. That's plain as can be, right? What was that saying about the boat? The Indians didn't recognize the Pilgrims because they didn't know what a boat looked like. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have the right people interviewing for the right types of positions. I use different people on my team to interview for different positions. I do. There's times that I go, okay, this is not my field. This is not my expertise. This is not how my mind works. Somebody else needs to do this. And you should always have someone stepping in to check your biases too, because we all get them. Everybody does. Your brain is supposed to create biases, because back in hunter-gatherer days, that kept us safe. It still does to a large extent, but it can also create problems. So you always have to go back and revisit and make sure and check yourself and go, wait a minute. Okay, I'm being a little silly here. Let's restart this. The best way in my mind to do that when you're in hiring is to go into every single situation expecting to be proved wrong. That's what I do. When I go into every single interview, I expect at some point to find out something and to realize I was wrong about it. But it's to my interpretation.
Expectation, right?
Yeah,
Your
just the
expectation.
open-ended, and that's so important. And I know right now a lot of people are overwhelmed with the discussions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and eliminating bias in the hire process. I know a lot of people are just oversaturated with posts and information and all of that, but it is very important. And a lot of people have a including in HR and recruiting, have the misconception that diversity hiring means that you're hiring more minorities, or that you're hiring more transgender people or LGBTQ or whatever, whatever, or more people of this religion than that one.
External diversity.
External diversity, right? That isn't really what diversity hiring is. And nobody, believe me, nobody wants token hiring. I've done a lot of research into this. No one wants it. It is bad. It does not help anyone. What everybody is looking for is what's called true diversity hiring. My saying is hire the person, not their wrapping. So not all the stuff that you can see, not all of the things that are obvious to the outside world, but hire that person. And when you're doing true diversity hiring, you need to be hiring people from different backgrounds. Just different color, different gender, all of that isn't enough. You have to hire different human beings. I have team members that have all different backgrounds, all different personalities. I have one that's not even from the same country as everybody else. And I have one that has a learning disability. I have somebody that has autism on the team. I have people that have different religions, different, all different types of characteristics, because that's how I understand my candidates. That's how I understand my clients. And everybody has their own special gifts. And together, we come together and we have wonderful success. And I couldn't do it without them. I couldn't do it, because they bring something that I can never have, each one of them. I don't want 50 Katherines. I'm great. I'm wonderful. I will sit around and tell people all day long, I know what I can do. And I'm very, very good at what I do. But you still have to have those other pieces. And that's where true diversity hiring comes in. And Boston Consulting Group did a study that said that you get an average of 19% increase in revenue by having true diversity hiring. And
True
that's
diversity
huge.
hiring. Again, we're not talking about the external diversity.
Yes, but true diversity. And yes,
Yeah.
those other things matter too, but what's going to happen is when you hire properly, all of those other things get taken care of anyway. All of those other, you will have people with different races, you will have people with different religions, you will have people with different orientations and identities. All of those things will fall into place when you hire properly and as you grow. But when you're a little itty bitty company, you only have 6 positions, you're not going to have the hugest diversity. That's okay. And also depending on your geographical location. So if you're in Montana, it's going to be a lot harder to have a 50% minority ratio, right?
That's right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you just can't do it. So that's where internal diversity becomes the key factor.
Well, in 2018, when we first trademarked behavior diversity, I think it was December 2018 when it was either Forbes or Harvard Business Review came out and said that it was, if companies were hiring for culture fit, it could be a form of discrimination.
Yes.
Again, the behavior, the differences we can't see, right?
Yeah.
And so you have those outliers, the people that are more assertive or less compliant, right? Those are the ones that people like you said, they automatically discount them and say, oh, they're troublemakers or they're rogue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're the ones, the creative and the entrepreneurs. Can't you just see it? They're the,
Oh yeah.
the ones that
Go,
save your
okay.
company, people.
I always laugh because every great entrepreneur has a story about getting fired. And every great anybody has been told that they're not the right fit at some point. No matter what your position is, you've been told you're not the best at some point, or you're not the right fit or something like that. And what's really funny to me is that a lot of times people what they're doing is saying, you're not what I had in my head. So you're not right. Not that you're actually not the right fit. It's that
Right.
you're just not what I pictured in my brain. So, and this idea that you have to have experience in everything is ludicrous. It's ludicrous. I have hired dozens upon dozens upon dozens of recruiters over the years, either for myself or someone else, building out other people's teams. You know how many experienced recruiters I've hired? Two. Two. Were they my top performers? Nope. And they were great. Don't get me wrong. They were great,
Right.
but they were not my top performers. And everybody else did very, very well. And not that every hire I've ever made was perfect, but in general, the non-experienced people did very well. I've plucked people from working at Office Depot, security jobs, receptionist jobs, bartending. If they have the right fit, I can see it and I want them. And I steal them away. I do it all the time. I love
We used to
what I
do
do.
that for LASIK when I went
Yeah.
around and hired LASIK counselors, patient
Mhm.
counselors. I went to Starbucks. I'd go into the site, the
Yep.
there's area the day before, go to Starbucks. Hey, if want another job, let me know, because they're
Yeah.
already trained in customer service, right? I can
Yep.
teach anybody anything about LASIK, right? But it's
Right.
harder to teach, good customer service or communication skills, right?
And it's the same thing with work ethic and with recruiting. You either have the instinct and you have that drive, or you don't. Now, work ethic can change when somebody's happier at their job too. There can, but that internal drive is kind of what I mean. That internal drive,
Yeah.
like I just have to succeed. That's kind of what I meant by that. And a lot of employers miss too that your employer branding matters. So I am my employer brand. I'm it. When you meet me, this is Titan management right here. For bigger
That's so
companies,
true.
and yeah, and then other companies, what you have to remember is that your hire process starts way before you even open up that role. When you're on your social media, when you are doing press releases, on your website, your employer branding sends a huge message. And not to mention like Indeed and Glassdoor reviews. I mean, those can just kill your hire process right there. You get a few really bad messages or a few really bad reviews, you're done. You're done.
Wow.
I've seen companies that can't get even mediocre talent because their reviews are just so bad, and they won't get rid of the one problem, or they won't change the one problem. Now, if you have some bad ones and then you fix it and you get a couple of good ones on top of that, you're fine. Everybody knows stuff can go wrong. It's okay. But on your social media, show your culture, show what you do, show the day to day so that people can get to know you. It's an emotional decision, both directions when you hire.
It's so true, but I think employers, they think, oh no, people need a job, so we don't really have to be concerned with that. I'm like,
And let
oh,
me tell you,
you're
even in
going to be
today's
gone in
market,
a limited time, right?
and even in today's market, when it's super, super saturated, candidates are now more educated about what they should be looking for. They are more confident because of all the education that they got during COVID from all the webinars and posts and all that kind of thing.
So
Employers need to
true.
get it right. They need to get it right because the candidates now have a lot more understanding of and better skills for job searching than they did before.
And
So
that
employers
comes
need to
down to
get it.
candidate experience, right?
Yes,
When we talk
candidate
about the
experience is
candidate experience.
huge. Yeah. So start with that employer branding. Then you need to have the right technologies in place from your applicant tracking system. And I mean, as you know, I'm developing one. It's rolling out this week. I'm very, very excited about it. It has a diversity, equity, inclusion, accountability, as well as candidate experience accountability feature where everybody can just click and just see how you're doing on those two fronts. And it eliminates bias and all of that. But there are other great applicant tracking systems out there. I don't want to act like mine is the only one. It's not. Have that right. Also use things like you can look up Interview AI. They're wonderful. And then I wrote them down because I always get their name on. iWorkZone is also really good. And they are the only like test that I've ever seen. It's not really a personality test, but that's just kind of the best way I can describe it.
Right.
It's the only one I've ever seen that's effective because it shows you who the person is. It's not a bunch of asinine questions like, what would you do if you saw somebody steal $5? That anybody knows what you want them to say and they just are going to put whatever. They're a lot more in depth, and it's really spot on. It's really, really spot on. It's incredible technology. So have things like that, and then train your hiring team, whether it's HR,
Yeah.
recruiting, hiring managers. Everybody needs to be on the same page about what you're looking for. Everybody needs to have training, and they need to have the same metrics to which they are holding candidates accountable, and to which they're grading candidates. So that way it's consistent across the board. Okay, so that way it's not just, oh well, we liked this person over here, but we never asked them all these questions over here. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Make sure every candidate is answering the same types of questions, getting the same types of information, so you can make an informed decision and respond to people. It's not that hard.
I love it. Just please give people feedback and respond to them.
And I'm not saying everyone who applies, because I realize you might get hundreds and hundreds of applicants. I understand that, but anyone that you speak to, you owe them a response. So give them a response, and give them some detailed feedback if you've actually spoken to them, and tell them what's going on. Now, it can be via email. That's fine. Your applicant tracking system can send automated emails for certain things, but communicate with people. And if you tell them you're going to do it by a certain date, do it. And then kind of the last thing is make sure that you're not fixated on the resume. Okay, guys, don't stare at a resume while you're interviewing. Don't, Foster say, yeah, we're so inundated with time. Yes, you're absolutely right, Foster. But don't, when you're looking at a resume, just see it as what it is, sort of a general intro, just like you look at a LinkedIn profile. This is not the whole person. Look for certain key points, and then go from there, and never look at that resume again. Just talk to that person, get to know that person, ask open-ended questions that encourage them to really communicate with you. And that's how you get the right person. And then when you onboard them, be ready for them. Have their computer ready. Have training ready for them. Even if they're an expert in their field, they still need to be trained to your ways. Welcome them. If you're a small company, take them out to lunch. Have an official onboarding process. The mayhem will make you lose people. Oh, and give them a start date.
Yeah, because they don't feel settled, right? They don't feel settled.
That's right. That's right. And start dates. I've had to tell 3 different companies that lately. Start dates. Give people start dates when you want them to come work for your company. Very important. Very important. And at the beginning, when you very first offer them the job, give them the start date.
We really think that that's basic, right? That somebody would know that.
But people don't realize. I think that there's like we want to do the background check, we do all this kind of stuff, and then they think they're supposed to give it. No. Start date, and while you're waiting for the start date, you do all of those other things.
Exactly. Wow, that's been quick. I'm telling you. Anybody, we have some chat here. I'm really loving the exchange. Thank you so much. So there's one coming up, when it's asking a question about when is there going to be true objective resources in hiring? Wow. Well, you at least need more than a resume and other human beings, right? We said, that's going to add to it is more than one person interviewing. We said that making sure that you have a consistent list of questions that are open-ended to gather more information about a person's experience, etc. Right? Be clear.
And your technology needs to not create biases. A lot of tracking systems, they weren't meant to do this, but they create biases, and they'll kick people out for asinine things. And even just resume format can get
stupid
jumbled up in there. So make sure your technology is on point, please, guys. That's so very important.
I mean, real basic.
That will help keep things objective as well.
I love it.
And
Cindy,
if you can find something to mask, by the way, that's huge.
Right.
And use videos and things like that as well.
We got a question, when is the appropriate time to discuss salary with a candidate? And I prefer to have the discussion up front during the pre-screening. What do you think?
Yes, that. People, first of all, I put it in every single message that I send out. You will know what at least the range of what that position is paying. And at the very least, whether you are a candidate or hiring team member, by the end of the first conversation, compensation should have been discussed. 100%. Do not wait to the end. There's no reason to. There's literally no reason to. And you don't need to know their past salary, by the way. That has nothing to do with it. What are you paying for that position?
Yeah, thank you for calling that out, because again, these old practices that we do just because they've been done before doesn't mean that you should. Okay. I mean,
yeah, they also used to not allow women in the workplace. I mean, just because there's something used to be that way doesn't mean it's the right way to do things.
Right. I mean, we are definitely reimagining work. And Katherine, thank you so much. Gosh, our time went by real quick. Thank you so much. Oh, Jane, yes, salary talk up front. Why do we continue to keep it a secret until the very end?
Stop hiding
Thank
it.
you,
It's
Jane.
so and the same thing with benefits and all that kind of thing. Put it out there. You should be proud of your
This is so secretive. Like, what is it for?
What? Yeah, what is the secret about that? I've never understood that. I'm like, I just feel like you're being shady automatically. If you're hiring.
Hey,
like,
you know what?
You're super shady.
Shady. That is the exact word. I love it. Shady.
You're a palm tree. You're casting shade.
I love it. Oh, my friend, thank you so much. I love that, giving a little tease of what your June talk is going to be about. And everyone stay tuned. We have some more our content marketing throughout up to the event and afterwards. So we're very excited to just keep on feeding.
And join us in June.
Oh yeah, please do. Again, tickets for the HR Disruptor Summit go on sale next Monday. Again, the event June 15th through 17th. And we'd love to see our fellow disruptors there. So hope you'll join us. Again, Katherine, thank you, my friend. And I hope you have a great week. Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.